Hello and welcome back to the latest episode of the Master of None podcast. I'm your host, as always, Stephen Murphy. I'm joined by the usual rugby crew of Sam and Westy. How are the boys?
Good.
We seem to be doing some sort of big box, little box, I see.
Yeah,
correct. You know your TD Bopper disco dances.
I
man.
do,
You
man.
always
I
did.
used to, I'm a big fan of the shopping cart. There's a few of them, Change
Oh
the
no, I
light
got that
bulbs.
change in the light bulb going
Yeah,
on.
that's a classic too, man. That's a classic too.
Westy
And
was always big with the pepper mill. That was
rolling the lucky dice.
I'm a stack the shelf. Stack the shelf.
Enough about 90s dancing.
90s dancing.
Well, I know. I was going to say. Well,
Were you alive in the 90s?
It was 93. But I come out of the womb dancing. You know that, Westy. You know that.
I was there. I saw it happen.
Westy is my father. Two games to talk about. The first game
really? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. Well, I don't know if you call the Connacht game a game, but we'll talk about that.
It's more like a poker match. There's so many cards,
Oh, I like it.
We like that.
I like that. Well, we'll talk Connacht game first, and let's be frank. There's the first pun of the day. Frank Murphy's performance. I've listed here my notes as negatives and positives from the game, and shockingly enough, in my negatives, I have Frank Murphy's performance. I'll get my kind of view out of the way before the Connacht bias comes in. I thought both red cards were red cards. I had no issue with that. I think he was bad for both teams. He definitely hurt Connacht more in the highlights and stuff I've seen. But again, what I get annoyed about most when I complain about referees, it's always about inconsistencies. If it's consistent for both teams, I think people will accept that. But it was inconsistencies which I don't like. I think we said at the time watching as well. Connacht could have had a penalty try pretty easily in the second half when number 7 for Munster is South African. I can't think of his name now. Cote. He brought down a maul that was a couple of yards out that was definitely going to get over the line. No yellow, nothing for that. Whereas a penalty try in the first half against Connacht was given pretty quickly. I think sometimes Connacht were definitely ill-disciplined. There's no doubt about that. Too many cards, too many stupid stuff. But Frank Murphy definitely didn't help. So that's my opinion out of the way. Westy, you can start. Go.
Look, it's highly disappointing. Obviously, I don't think we didn't come out of the gate on the mark anyway. We got off to a slow start. You can't really deny that. I think going on the Frankie Murphy points, I think Frankie Murphy kind of picked up where he left off last week, as in like Connacht have had a yellow card for infringements. So if they infringe now, they're going to get more yellow cards. I think that he obviously, I don't mean that he intentionally had a chip about it, but like he started off kind of not willing to kind of put up with us. But I think that's kind of also maybe a shortcoming of ours as well. We got pinged heavily for not rolling away against Ulster. Now, again, I don't think that was consistent in both teams. Sometimes we got pinged for not rolling away. Sometimes we didn't. Sometimes Ulster never got pinged for not rolling away. So I think that we really should have, it should have been a sit down all week and been like, lads, this is where we gave away penalties the first time. Like around the breakdown, those are all our penalties were really, apart from the red cards. And we hadn't taken the corrective action from last week. If you get pinged heavily for something one week and it's the same ref, you really have to go out of your way not to do it. Having said that, I think a yellow card in the first 7 minutes is ridiculous. I think was Oliver's yellow card was for not rolling away when he was literally sprawled out at the base of the ruck. As you do, you lie out and be out of everybody's way. And if he had done more, he was going to roll out and take Conor Murray out of the game. So I don't know. I think that's best effort made. I think he's not in the way of the ball. He's not preventing any play from happening. He's just lying at the base of a ruck in near where the ball is, but not obstructing anybody from doing anything. The Reds were Reds, obviously. They were red cards. Despite Sam's complete and utter sticking to a point until 10 minutes later we saw a picture of the shoulder. That was it.
We watched the game together and Papali just destroyed Conor Murray and pretty clearly made contact with his head. So much so that Conor Murray had whiplash nearly. But Sam argued to the death nearly that it was.
I'll defend my arguments that at the time, all of the angles we saw before he got the red card. When he got the red card, all the angles we had seen hadn't shown any clear contact with the head. There are angles that have come out subsequently. They came out about 10 minutes later watching the game. They cut back to it, and then on Twitter, pictures of it that show it clearly. But at the time when we were watching it, you can't say, and no one can say that when we were watching it, you could see clear contact with the head. The way it looks, probably he's in such a weird position where his chest is kind of somehow higher than his own shoulder, and he hits with his bicep. His bicep makes contact with the head. The shoulder kind of is in and around that area. But it at the time when we were watching it, and I'm always going to be passionate and always going to be a bit biased when I'm watching something and think that something's bullshit. It was unfortunate for the ref that call came after he made some calls that I do think were genuinely wrong, or do think that were genuinely quite harsh. So it was just an accumulation of that. But at the time, the replays weren't conclusive enough for me. I've seen since that obviously he was in the wrong. He hit him so hard. He did make contact with the head, and that's warrants the red card, and it's unfortunate. The Delahunt red card that's just
silly, isn't it?
Like it's well, I just think it's match rustiness. I think it's like, that's 2-3 weeks into a season, and you've kind of gotten yourself, you're back used to hitting contact, you're back used to body positions. I think that's fine. Like you wouldn't have done that. I think that was just overzealous match rustiness. Like there was an entirely new team outside of Masterson playing. And it was just unfortunate. And the second red is always going to kill off a game. It's also probably frustratingly for Munster, it killed off a competition in terms of, like, Munster weren't playing the game that they wanted to use the rest of that match for, which was to practice and train and use opportunities to get better for Leinster. They were playing very off the cuff, and they were getting a bit expansive, getting a bit kind of having a laugh with it, which I don't think is the end goal of what they want out of the game. Like, playing against the 13 men allowed them to kind of do that. And Connacht stood up really well. I think we were good with 13 men. Like Quinn Rue was saying, and Andy Friend was saying, they don't like being the team that are applauded for their fight, but not for the results. And that's fair. Like, that's what you don't want to be remembered as down the line. But I do think that there's a lot of positives to take from the game and from the last 2 weeks going into the new season. I was impressed with most of the new players coming in. I was impressed that we had 2 full teams. We played more than 30 players in 2 weeks straight, which is brilliant for our squad depth. We've struggled for depth in the last few years. And then I'm just very, very disappointed for Papali, because it was such a good opportunity. He looked like he was, taking the game by the scruff of the neck. There's a few people kind of banding around whether or not he'd be able to convert from league, or if he had the right amount of conditioning because of the standard he played. I think people in Ireland tend to view Mitre 10 as a subpar sort of league. I don't think they give it the what it's due, and actually accept that it's probably on par. James Lowe said it's on par with the Pro 14 in terms of ability wise. And we've watched Super Rugby. Like, if that's the standard of like rugby in New Zealand, their club rugby where a lot of these players are playing, it's going to be up there. So we played for Bay of Plenty. Like, there's definitely opportunity for him. So I was just disappointed for him as well, because he was having a good game, and 2 inches lower and he absolutely wallops Conor Murray. He doesn't get sent off, but we're all going, absolutely love that lad.
Well, in the first few minutes, he does basically, like, he holds CJ Stander up and pops the ball out, which is no easy feat.
No.
He looked really impressive. He looks aggressive. He looks like a real addition. As we said, his play style, 80% of the time it's going to be fine. There is going to be that 20% of the time where he does cross a line, because that's just how he plays. If he can bring that down, then that's great, but that's also what makes him a really good player. But yeah. I just want to touch the last thing we'll talk about with the refereeing is just, as you said earlier on, Westy, with the first yellow card. We've seen then if later in the game, Blade gets penalised because he's at the bottom of a ruck and he knows that he's penalising that rolling away. So he actually makes an outrageous effort to get up, but then obstructs Murray and gets a penalty against him for that. So you players, and it's silly by Blade to do that, but that is definitely a knock-on effect of knowing that if he lies there and tries his best, he still might get penalised. It's tough.
One of the things that people will fall back on is that the onus is on the tackling player always. You should know how to tackle. You should know how to fall. You should know how to fall out of a ruck. It is the kind of line that they use, even though that's that's a really hard thing to do with such a high tempo game. It's.
Yeah, I think what you were saying with the Blade thing just highlights, like, it's not I'm not going to say Frank Murphy had anything in for us, because I just think he was poor both ways. I think he was poor in the both games. Like we had him, he was a bit overzealous with the whistle. I think he was penalising stuff that didn't need to be penalised. It was like not rolling away or not releasing quick enough. But the ball was going to be playable, and it was going to be, but he was penalising it. And then Oliver got a yellow card for that. In the first game against Ulster, I think we were penalised a bit more for doing something that both teams were doing, and I think he had no grasp of the kind of the whether or not someone was supporting themselves or whether or not they needed to support themselves, because there were people flying and flopping all over the place, and he was picking and choosing who he was penalising both ways. I think he was poor both ways, and I think it highlights something that we've been saying for a year or two, Westy, going to matches. I think the standard of the reffing in the Pro 14 is very, very poor. I think you don't, like, outside of Nigel Owens, you don't see any really top quality international refs coming out of it. And I think it's something that needs to be addressed. Like, you look at in the RFU in the UK, JP Doyle had to be let go, and he's an Irishman regarded as one of the best referees around, and they had such a kind of a wealth of refs, and they had to make some budget cuts that they were able to get rid of him, whereas we have a really, really poor standard of refereeing in the league. I think regularly both teams are aggrieved by something the ref has done in games. Like, we come out of the sports ground walking alongside Leinster fans or Munster fans or Ulster fans, Cardiff, or whatever it is, and we can have conversations where both sets of fans are going, oh, the ref was useless, he missed all those high tackles, or he penalised not rolling away quick enough, or there was knock-ons that just weren't seen by sideline judges, and it happens far too often in Pro 14. I think it really needs to get looked at.
I agree, and we saw during the week that the IRFU kind of announced their tier of referees, and Frank Murphy's in the top of the tiers.
In the God tier.
Basically highly developed, I think is what they call, which is just like, it's not a good look. But I just want to touch on a few more negatives, and then we will get on to the positives after the games. I thought Munster in general looked pretty sluggish. For most of this game, they had a 2-man advantage, and they really only into the last 15-20 minutes really made a count. I think we said at the time, like, a Leinster team would have put 70 points up on Connacht there easily. Going into the semi-final this weekend, Munster, I didn't see a lot from them that really excited me, or that they looked like they were really, all in unison together. I thought they looked pretty sluggish. And then the air commentary I also wanted to touch on. It's just poor. Remember that skip pass that they said? It was the last Connacht try, and he said it was a lovely skip pass where the ball was
bounce pass, he called it.
A bounce pass.
It was a bad pass that bounced out to Johnny Murphy.
First of all, it's not basketball. You don't bounce pass in rugby, okay? The ball, it tends to stay off the ground as much as possible when you're passing it. And he's like, oh, that's a lovely bounce pass. Like, all right, trying to put a maybe positive spin on stuff, but, like, come on. I just didn't like that. But on the Munster point, Westy, do you agree with me? They looked very sluggish, or do you think that they actually were better than they looked?
Yeah, I think that there was definitely people like Damon de Allende had a great game. Like, a lot of them. It's hard to give people, like, it's hard to give anybody honest credit for having a great game when you're playing 13 men. Like, it's not really, it's not hard to look good when you're professional and you're playing against 13 men. I think if you were Leinster, you're not really that worried about after watching. You would have been more worried 2 weeks ago than you were after last week. After playing them last time, you'd be more worried than you were about watching them play us. I think, I say, what was it, 7 tries in the end by Munster? 3 of those were before half time, wasn't it? Was it 21-7 at half time?
Yeah.
And then I said they got 2 in quick succession around 55 minutes, 60 minutes. And I even said to you guys, I was like, I can, like, because Connacht did fight really well, and I don't like the pat on the back either, but, like, against later on, there's definitely 1 or 2 great performances from Connacht. But I said to you guys, I was like, oh, like, we'll fight, we might get an extra try, maybe 2, but the last 10 minutes they'll walk tries in for fun. And they actually didn't get near us in the last 10 minutes, really. Like, they really should have been more clinical they could have put, as you say, Leinster might have put 70 points on us.
The brace of tries kind of came around the substitution times when lads were coming on full of energy, and that was sort of like a bit too much for Connacht to handle. But then, as you say, they did stem the tide a bit. Sam, what do you think?
I think, I wouldn't be too worried about Munster if I were Leinster, except for the fact that I thought Leinster have been a little bit sloppy. Like, they're kind of just going through the motions. They didn't really need much out of the 2 games, and they were able to play a lot of players. I think I read somewhere they played 37 players or something in the 2 games. I wouldn't be too worried about it, considering, like, Munster played quite well against them and still couldn't beat them when they were making a few mistakes. And then Munster played, well enough against us. I love being able to look at people who were last week saying like, oh, you have to caveat Connacht's win against Ulster by saying like, oh, Ulster had nothing to play for. But then like when you try and say, oh yeah, but you were playing against 13, they're like, doesn't matter. Munster played great, expansive rugby. You're like, I think people just on Twitter need to be quiet. Myself included.
It's Twitter, man. This is
I know, yeah, but no, I wouldn't be too worried about them if I were Leinster going into next week. What I will say about Munster is I found, I know they were the only team at the weekend who really had something to actually play for, but I found it odd how many minutes coming off the back of 5 months off, how many minutes a lot of their players have gotten. You got Keith Earls and Conway, like they have to go in next week. Like you want to play them next week. They have to go in. They played a lot of rugby now in 2 weeks, and bodies are going to be sore. Like it's a 5-day turnaround for Munster. It's not going to be easy at all. I wasn't hugely impressed. I thought Dialande was underrated again by the mainstream media. I'm reading that he wasn't up to par. I was like, what are you talking about? He's their best player by far, I think. I thought CJ Stander was extremely good. I was impressed by him. I'm such a big fan of his. And then I thought Conway was very good as well. And, obviously it's nice to see Murray doing well. Got a nice little problem there for Ireland with the talented scrum half at the moment. So Murray getting back to his best as well is only going to be a good thing for the Irish team.
Well, it was his position when he was playing bad, so I don't think it's really up for debate.
I will say though,
what if they drop him now after playing well? Plot twist.
It still really bemuses me. The more I was thinking about it yesterday, the more I'm kind of amused by like Papali'i was given the red card for dangerous play and contact to the head, and that's understandable. You've seen the replay, but then Murray, like he's not taken off for any sort of HIA at all. Whereas like if there's contact to the head, it's supposed to be a HIA straight away. And that's like that's the rules or what they brought in the last year to make sure that like people are given their assessment and given their assessment time, which I thought that was an interesting thing. I think that that went a bit unnoticed, and it shouldn't. That sort of stuff shouldn't happen. Players it's there for the safety of the players, and like if someone is hitting the head like that, and if it warrants a red card, it warrants a HIA, I reckon. But I don't know. Yeah,
especially that force that he was hit at, but. Right, on to the positives because we've been negative so far. Positive, obviously, Connacht from Papali'i when he was playing looked really good, like a really good player. Bundy, come on, was pissed off, and it showed. He was absolutely immense. He was taking on 3 or 4 lads at one time and like doing well against them. For Connacht, when it was down to 13 versus 13 before the halftime, they did look very competitive. If not, they looked like the better side for the 10 minutes or so that it happened, because we've seen it with mauls and scrums. They looked like they actually had the power of Munster a few times, and they scored a try right in the brink of half time there. I thought Caelan Blade was really impressive at the weekend on Saturday or Sunday. Sorry, he wasn't Marmion level, but he was definitely he was one of the few shining lights kind of for Connacht. And then on the Munster side, obviously, it's good to see Tyburn back from an Irish perspective, back playing well. And he got man of the match. We can argue whether he deserved it or not, but he still looked, he looked good and he looked healthy, and that's a good thing overall. But Westy, kind of positives obviously from Connacht side and then Munster side, but what kind of stood out to you as positives?
Yeah, I think, I will never stop. To his eternal credit, I will praise Bundy Aki. Like, not meant to be in the starting squad, comes on after 20 minutes for Tiernan O'Halloran. And I was reading an article there talking about the noise in the stadium. They're like Bundy Aki never stopped screaming at people. Like, I think if you're let's say if Andy Farrell is watching that match, and we know George Schmidt never used to watch Connacht matches, so I don't know if Andy Farrell has the same
playing Munster, so there was every chance he might have watched the highlights. Like.
Yeah, the 3-minute highlights.
I think if you are watching, like, I don't see how any squad cannot have Bundy Aki in it. Like, you can talk to me all day about Henshaw Ringo has been a better partnership, but how you cannot have Bundy in a camp, in a match day 23. Like, I think he starts every game, but if you want to argue with me that he might be on the bench or in some other capacity, you'll be wrong, but I might listen. But if you try to discount him being in that squad, I don't think that's a thing you can do.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
I do think I thought Caelan Blade was really impressive. I thought, like, he kept a really high tempo for as long as he was on the pitch. Again, he was one of the people kind of driving us on to play well. When people were kind of sluggish, he was picking and going, he was driving through. I think, again, if you're watching that from an Ireland perspective, okay, again, you're probably not going to start him, but he definitely has to be under consideration when you start looking at squad rotations for this 8 Nations tournament that might go ahead. I think the transfers were really good. I think Conor Oliver, again, I don't think that was the yellow card. I think he played very well. I think Sammy Arnold looked very good. Connor Fitz as well, I thought was maybe a little bit out of his depth. Maybe the fact that we went down to 13 was just a little bit too much pressure on him. Again, to his credit, he stood up and fought for the whole thing. I just think he wasn't really as good as maybe we saw him at his best last year. So yeah, I think there's definitely still standout performances in the Connacht side, and the fact that we managed to score 2 tries with 13 men is still kind of impressive in a way. From a Munster side, Munster pack looked pretty strong when they got going. I do think Ty Byrne is a fantastic athlete, and it was great to see him back. I don't think he should have man a match. I think for me it was CJ Stander. I think CJ Stander threw Connacht lads around like ragdolls at points in that game, which was painful to see. Yeah, Dale Ende I think is brilliant. I think some people don't credit this, especially in professional rugby, his work rate off the ball. For that Conway try, he is on the shoulder of the ball the whole time. He even breaks himself and unselfishly offloads when he could easily just try and battle for the line.
Even on that Westie as well, he does the showdown, which is what all great players do, but he sort of guides Masterson out of the way for another break, which, when you break down always the great teams, they always do it. He adds that kind of dimension out of Munster as well, a bit of know-how, how to win, sort of stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, Dylan, I thought it was a great game. Conway had a great game, as Sam said already, as you said already. I think Munster's problem now, as Sam said, is that they're gonna go into a game now on, I think it's a Friday night, 5-day turnaround, essentially the same team playing 2 weeks in a row. And again, I think it was a great win for them. It was exactly what they needed, but in terms of a win, it was what they needed because they needed a point. But it won't have been as beneficial for them as it should have been. But yeah, I think they look like a great squad all around. But they will need to be a world-class squad to beat Leinster.
Yeah.
So I just complimented Ulster there by caveating everything good about them. I'm not bitter.
Yeah, exactly. Sam, do you want to add to that?
No, not particularly. I thought it was disappointing for Healy, Rob, and then Tiernan to get injured, which was I was excited to see Healy back. It's been a while since he's consistently been in the team, and Rob as well. Rob's kind of played with injuries, which is disappointing. Bundy was great, and then I think I tweeted last week that I missed Pat Lamb's tactic of packing Bundy down at 8 and letting him just run down the 10 channel, and we got to see it a few times because needs must. On defense, I thought we defended even when we had less people. Our defensive maul stopped them a few times, which was something that we haven't done in years, is had a functioning defensive maul. So that was nice to see, genuinely the maul stopped and Murray having to use it. And then Johnny Murphy was quite good.
Use it
for 10 seconds or whatever. But there was one with Blade that I was going to get onto, I forgot. But ref said use it, and Blade got about 10 extra seconds out of it. So I think that rule needs to be enforced or not enforced. Do one of them.
It's a law.
Yeah, that law. Sorry, but the pack were impressive.
You Courtney fucking laws, huh?
I thought our boy Niall Murray was very good. We didn't win anything in the line out. We didn't steal anything in the line out, but I thought he was good jumping on our own line out.
They seemed to be tactic in the first half. They didn't really contest any defensively. They seemed to just sort of get
you're not going to contest defensively when you're 2 men down.
Well, yeah, that definitely. Yeah.
And then I thought it was good heart from everyone. It's nice to see new players debuting as well. Kilgallen was on the wing. He was called into the squad very, very late for his debut. The chap's only after kind of getting into Connacht in the last year or so. And so it's great to see players like that getting a chance when they need to. It's unfortunate the circumstance was being called up last minute, but fair play to him for stepping up and baptism of fire with that one. But no, positives wise, I take a lot of positives out of the last 2 weeks. I said it on Twitter. I say it if we go in with that ability, 35, 36 people playing over the course of 2 weeks, that the way we played. If we go into the season with that and hone it down and keep the injuries down, I think that you extremely positive for next season.
Yeah, I'd agree. This weekend, then obviously Munster Leinster on Friday night. I don't think Munster have much of a chance, unfortunately. I think Leinster will win this comfortably enough. I think Leinster are only going to get better, this game and then the following game, just because they're getting more repetition. As I said, Munster didn't really show me much at the weekend that I think will really challenge Leinster. But maybe I'm being pessimistic. Westy, what do you think? Leinster or Munster?
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo a bit of what Sam said in that Leinster really haven't had to, I don't think they've really had to exert themselves too much. Like, obviously, Munster rattled them a little bit 2 weeks ago, but as I said, like, I think I said on the last podcast, like, everything Leinster did seemed pretty effortless. It just kind of seemed to flow really well for them, which is, don't get me wrong, that's all them. That's how good they are. But as well, you've got, like, they've got the team that played Munster 2 weeks ago who didn't play at all last week. They played what could be called a second 15 last week against Ulster, and they still won pretty comfortably. I know the game was a little bit closer than the scoreline suggests, but yeah, I think in terms of Leinster, when you talk about a second 15, like, it's not the same in normal clubs where you have like a second 15 that's not your best 15. They have a second, yeah, like you guys in the Corinthians. They have a second 15 that is the team that play 80% of their games because they're either on international duty or playing European or knockout rugby. This is the team that plays all the time. So yeah, I think Leinster have way too much firepower. I think if Ryan Baird plays well again, I think if James Ryan is back, they're saying he's in light training. There's talk that Dan Levy might be back. Now, I doubt they will play them because I don't think they need to, but like, they've just so many options. Like Will Connors, if they want to start Harry Byrne was brilliant to get when he came on against Ulster. Yeah, I just think there's far too much firepower in the Leinster squad. Like, I hope Ulster will give them a good game again, but sorry, go on.
If they rush back James Ryan and injure him more, I'm going to be so pissed off. There's no need to bring him back for this. And same with Dan Levy. There's no need for, like, let them heal up fully. Like, James Ryan he was out for months, and now it's
supposed to be 9 months, and now it's like
a handful of weeks.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand
either he's on all the steroids or just he's a freak of nature. But do not rush him back. But yeah, we're kind of Leinster. Obviously, will not spend too long on Leinster because God knows every other news channel or anything like that will just talk about Leinster. But the Ross Byrne versus Harry Byrne debate is going to be a fun one to kind of keep track of here, because obviously Ross would have had more game time, but everyone seems to be touting Harry as the better player. So it'd be interesting to see, because obviously Sexton playing for another couple of years, which seems like it's going to be the case. Which one becomes kind of impatient first? Who will leave? Where will they go? Sort of thing. Like, Sam, what from what you've seen of Harry and Ross, do you think Harry is the better player so far?
I think he right now he's not. I think he's definitely got the potential to be. He looks a great player, and he's got every opportunity to become kind of essentially the Ross Byrne and take his brother's place, because he's got all the ability. He plays a bit more like Sexton than Ross Byrne does. Like, he plays really at the line. He's very exciting to watch. And then I think that in terms of what you were saying, like, in longevity wise, your backup, like Wesley just said, your backup out half for Leinster gets most of the games. Like, Sexton, if he's going to continue to play, is going to play less and less league games. He's going to play less and less week in, week out stuff. Like, Harry Byrne could be getting 75% of the season's games if he's the backup, and then if you want to divide that by two and have two equally good backups fighting it out, putting pressure on Sexton, happy days. It's just whether or not both players can see themselves as, happy sharing the backup role behind Sexton for however long that's going to be.
It's worth mentioning as well. Kieran Frawley is naturally a 10. I played 12 at the weekend, but they've that as well. Sorry, sir.
Yeah, well, see, like, I think that the 12 thing, he's probably had a conversation with someone there where he said, like, there's Harry and Ross at 10 already. Sexton is just looks and wants to play for as long as he looks and wants to play. I think Frawley's kind of, if he wants a future at Leinster, I think he's been probably told to expand his capabilities, expand his position, just become a utility player. Give them another option, because you're not as a specialist out half. You're clearly the fourth choice already. Obviously, he's a great player. He played against us last season, earlier on the season. He's very good. Like, he's a great player, but he's just, Ross and Harry are special talents, and then obviously Sexton is a former World Player of the Year. albeit I think it's a bad idea for him to continue to play. But if he feels he's up for it and he feels he wants to keep doing it and he keep playing, he'll become, if he does continue to play, he'll become the European Cup out half and maybe the odd Pro 14 final kind of player. But I don't know. I can't see what's he going to be, 36? Like, I can't see that happening. I can't see him playing week in, week out. So it's there for Harry Byrne if he wants it. By all reports, he's the better player. From what I've seen, he's not quite there yet, but he's definitely catching up with Ross. And Ross is a great player as well. Like, you know, he's played for Ireland. He's played consistently for Leinster while Sexton has taken his holidays mid-season. So, like, you know, fair play to them. Fair play to them for having that depth and for somehow having the capabilities of keeping that amount of quality players on the books and keeping them happy. Like, if they can continue to do that, I'd be amazed. But, you know, at some point, I just keep holding out hope that this will all blow up in their faces and all 55 of their players will be unhappy about not getting enough game time because they're all sharing it with each other. That's just me holding out hope.
They have to stop winning for that to happen, and I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon, unfortunately. But we'll flick over this Ulster because, again, I don't want to talk too much about Leinster because we know exactly what they're like. Ulster are sort of in a weird, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but they're not bad, but they're not amazing either. They're sort of in like a no man's land here when it comes to the provinces. I didn't see this game in full. I haven't seen the highlights. But where do we think Ulster are in relation to the Munster and say Leinster? Where do we think they are in the pecking order? Westy, you can take this one.
I think before lockdown, and again, there's probably a result out there that I'm not remembering to counteract this, but I think before lockdown, I think if you were looking at an Ulster-Munster semi-final, I'd be picking Ulster. I think they were the more dangerous team at the time. Again, I don't remember how the last InterPro went. I don't know, Sam, if you can correct me to say if Munster won the last one. But I definitely think Ulster were more dangerous. They were more exciting. They just seem to have a little bit more going for them. I think it's been said a few times, and I don't like to kind of, to harp on the old cliches, but they seem to be the heaviest hit by, well, until we got 3 cards in one game, they were the heaviest hit by lockdown. In that they just haven't got that spark back yet. I think they'll need a big performance against Edinburgh. I think Edinburgh are now, again, they lost to Glasgow at the weekend, but the weekend before they were head and shoulders above Glasgow. So I think Ulster are probably where they usually are. They're probably second or third in the pecking order. I think they've just fallen a little bit short each time. Like, we were the better team on the day, but we gave them petty chances to stay in the game. So they probably could have, it was only a 1-score game at the end of the day. They probably could have beaten us. They can only try just allowed the weekend. Like, they really didn't start playing in this game until about, I don't want to say at all in the first half, but certainly not until about 30 minutes in. So yeah, I just think they haven't really clicked back into form yet. So it's Ulster without that excitement that we're used to from last season. Or not last season, but pre-COVID.
Yeah. Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, I looked up there. They absolutely hockeyed Munster 3rd of January up in Ravenhill. Yeah, no, they were playing some of the most exciting rugby in Europe. You know, Cooney was being touted as, Lions out or Lions scrum half and stuff before COVID, and they just haven't looked the same in the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks is such a small sample size. It's so hard to gauge how you are. They're gearing up. Realistically, neither game mattered too much to them in terms of like what they were doing. A lot of players would be kind of on the pitch, but keeping themselves wanting to be fit for those European games they still have coming. So like, it's hard to really tell. I think that Leinster are just far and away better than the 2 other provinces. I think Munster just have this aura about them in terms of, we all talk about them as very good, but actually they've not been that good for a good few years. There's a reason why someone found the investment money to go get 2 World Cup winners, and they've got, new coaching systems, new, like, former international coaches coming in and being forwards coaches for them. Like, there is a big shake up happening there because they know that they've not been impressive. It's however many years, over 10 since they've won anything. So I think Munster need to step it up because I think Ulster have every chance of overtaking them as the second strongest province, definitely behind Connacht. So I think in fairness, I think they're similar positions now. Ulster probably a bit more exciting on the whole this season. We'll see how they get on for the next next couple of weeks. You know, the end of the season and going into next year. I'd like to see Ulster kick back to the way they were before.
Yeah.
Low, you know?
It's interesting to look at the signings as well. You know, you talk about like Munster bringing in Delende and Snyman. Like Ulster brought in Mathewson, who Munster let go last season, and then what's his name, Ian Madigan, who hasn't played consistently in 3 years. So
yeah,
it's a very interesting change there.
But Madigan and Matchson are not injured like Snyman is, so unfortunately
well, actually, I was going to say Snyman wasn't injured when they got him, but Delende was. So
yeah.
I'll give you that.
So predictions obviously for Ulster Edinburgh. I think I would be going Edinburgh again. The game's in Murrayfield, if I'm not mistaken, which it doesn't make that much of a difference with the lack of crowd home and away advantage anymore.
That stadium's empty always anyway. It genuinely is. Like
they had a small crowd at the weekend,
but they had 700 people at the weekend, which is probably half what they normally have. Like they have a stadium that fits 40,000 people, and they never get higher gates than we do in the sports ground. It's always quite empty. So I think from a Edinburgh point of view, it's not actually going to make too much difference. I don't think the away stuff matters as much with this, except for the fact that Ulster will just be a bit aggrieved about not being able to sleep in their own beds the night before, or having their own routines. Like that's the only thing that'll affect it. There won't be a kind of booing crowd on their back. But I think Edinburgh probably, like, I'd like to see Ulster win, obviously, but I think Edinburgh probably have it. You know, they've looked very good all year, and like the last couple of weeks they've looked.
Just to note as well for Ulster, Murphy and Stockdale are sort of questionable at the moment. Murphy is following the head injury protocol, and Stockdale had some sort of a leg issue, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember actually what it was, but they're obviously two massive players for Ulster. So if they're missing, then definitely Edinburgh, I think, are going to be pretty comfortable. But hopefully they get to play.
What's your over under on Frank Murphy cards at the weekend? He's revving that game. I'm saying 5. Like I'm saying 5 definitely.
Okay. I was going to say I think he's going to do no cards after the abuse.
No cards.
He's just going to go.
He's used his card quota for the last.
Yeah. He's got none left.
6 cards the last 2 weeks.
Just left him at home, lads. Sorry.
Yeah. Westy, what do you think, Ulster Edinburgh?
Yeah, like it's worth. Now look at I'm not as up to date on the Edinburgh squad as I should be, but you know, Ulster have a few injuries. They're still missing Ian Henderson. They're still missing Robert Balakoom, who is a really exciting talent to bring on. I think Edinburgh probably. I think it's going to be a close one. I think Edinburgh will win it. I think having to travel will be difficult for Ulster. I'll be interested to see how they set up their lineup. I mean, I imagine they'll start a similar team that started us. I can't imagine Madigan starting over Burns. I don't think he did anywhere near enough against Leinster to dislodge Burns. Without Stockdale, it'll be interesting to see because they still don't have Will Allison either. So, yeah, I think it is worth remembering that we're not looking at a full-strength Ulster team, and it is pretty influential people who are missing. So, yeah, I think Edinburgh will take it.
Yeah, okay. I think I agree. Just because I think the fact that, again, I think like what you said, Sam, the crowd obviously isn't going to make a difference just in that sense, but I think just the fact that, you know, Edinburgh at home will just sneak it for them. Right, that's enough of Northern Hemisphere stuff. We're going to go down south again. It's been a while since we talked about a bit of Super Rugby or a bit of New Zealand rugby, but we have the North Island versus South Island this weekend, which I'm very much looking forward to.
Oh, when you said Southern Hemisphere, we all assumed you meant the Super Rugby Australia final. It's also on, or semi-final, I should say.
I think it's pronounced
Last
Super
round.
Rugby. Super Rugby. Yeah. So
I said,
yeah.
it's not Aotearoa.
Or sorry, I'm busy. But reading up on this sort of stuff. So by all accounts, I thought this was going to be a bit like a Babas game where it's going to be offload city, dink city, all that sort of stuff. But by all means, it's not going to be that because this is kind of the first kind of get together of a lot of squad players for the new coach Ian Foster. So what I've read, he's going to try and use this as senior players, kind of getting the newer players or guys that haven't been in there before and really trying to go through sort of game plans of, potentially with All Blacks and sort of stuff, which which I'm actually looking forward to. I'm hoping this was going to be a competitive game because the bad games, by all accounts, are entertaining, but sometimes they are a bit of a whitewash, or they can be a bit, a bit ridiculous at sometimes. But I'm looking forward to this being a really competitive game. Sam, South versus North, obviously. What's getting your juices flowing for this?
The potential pairings and battles. I think we mentioned off air. Rich Mwanga and Jordy Barrett being on the same team, playing against Bowden Barrett, which is nice, and then like Pernara and Smith. Like I think that those are the sort of things like we've seen some Super Rugby the last couple of weeks. We were big into the Arthro, and it was lovely to see teams playing. But now you're starting to see some pairings or some grudge matches for positions for that All Blacks team. That's what I'm most excited about. Just seeing a few different combinations from the last couple of weeks, because we were getting used to the Super Rugby Arthro combinations, and now get to see a few different All Blacks potential combinations. Like I love the idea of Mwanga and Barrett, like Jordy Barrett being out full back and having just the capabilities of both of them kicking it, both of them running, either of them playing kind of as the first receiver. I like the idea of that. Where does Bowden play? That's another question. He's the only listed out half for them, so you got to figure he's going to be out half, but I don't know. There could be something sneaky stuck in. Who knows? It's Southern Hemisphere rugby, and anything goes.
Surprised. So Arthur Black didn't, or Terry Black didn't make the squad.
Yeah, that was surprising to be left out. I'd feel pissed off if I was him, but maybe it was to do with injury. He was carrying injury for the last.
I know he was. Yeah, I thought he was okay though, but
a bit of it. Yeah, but he was back then towards the end, so it's surprising that he wasn't. But I don't know. Maybe it's just a year too early for him in terms of being called up. See how it goes, but it's gonna be a great game, and I'm glad we can watch it now. There was rumblings of a 5 a.m. start.
So, but according to reports, aka Westy, it's at 7:30 Saturday morning.
Yeah.
According to a post I saw on the Sky Sports Twitter, it's at 7:30.
Yeah, exactly. Westy, what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I think it's interesting you describe it as a Ian Foster and the team's kind of way of looking at different combinations and different plays themselves. I think in my mind it's kind of the ultimate training camp game, because you're not they've put restrictions in place, right? It's the first team that you lined out for your first professional contract. Isn't that the criteria for North and South?
Yeah, it's who you made your Mitre 10 debut for.
Yeah, so you're not just it's not picking a full strength All Blacks team to play a second string All Blacks team. And again, with the wealth of talent we saw during our throw, it's essentially two possible All Blacks teams going against each other. I know there's one or two, maybe people who we aren't considering as All Blacks contenders, but obviously Ian Foster is. So yeah, I think it's the start of a new kind of international cycle for them. They've got the Rugby Championship coming up in a month or two's time. I think everyone on that pitch is going to be fighting for an All Blacks jersey. That's what they want. That's what every New Zealand player, every provincial player around the world wants, is they want to go in their national shirt. So I think this is, whether or not anybody admits it, I hope this player has been told, this is put your hand up and selection time. Yeah,
I get, from what I've seen, and it seems that way. It seems like this is what, because again, unfortunately with Foster, it's not been the best, starting year to be an All Blacks coach, because you haven't had what you would normally have in regards to training camps or games. And hopefully the Rugby Championship does go ahead, and not touch on wood, it does. But I think they're saying that they just hosted in New Zealand or something along the lines of that every game, which I think that they'll hopefully can do. But I'm just looking forward to, as I said, who I'm expecting a massive game from, because he's just happy not to be in the depression pit that is the Chiefs. Mackenzie, big game. He's just going to be like, oh my God, this is great. I've got really good players around me. Everyone's happy. I'm going to have a great game. I guarantee it. Mackenzie's going to have a savage game. But yeah, the Aaron Smith versus TJ, who gets the nod for that? Because, again, you would imagine going by it, if Smith starts, that seems to be who he's eyeing up for to be the starter. But maybe he's not. Maybe he's going to do some mind games. The forward packs on both teams are stacked. It's it should be just an incredible game. The idea of Mwanga playing with, as you said, Jordy Barrett on it, that's exciting as hell. I'm hoping it lives up to its billing, or the billing that we're giving it, at least. Will Jordan? Is Jordan going to start? What's he going to do in this game? It's just going to be you can just go literally through 1 to 15, and it's just exciting player after exciting player. But We're going to get up Saturday morning and watch that, which is going to be a cracker of a game. I think we've covered everything, lads. We'll obviously be back next week to hopefully review a Munster and Ulster win. Well, I say that. I don't. He's probably want Edinburgh to win because these are sour.
Yeah, I want Edinburgh to win because I think Edinburgh will beat Leinster in the final if they do. I think they're the only ones with a chance. I'd love to see a Munster-Ulster final, but realistically, I don't see Munster getting past Leinster, and I think Edinburgh have more chance of beating Leinster in the final than Ulster do. So, I like
your theory there. Leinster's going to win it all. Let's be honest. But look, it's fun to think about it, something different. All right, boys. Cheers. Always, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at MasterDonePod now. Not the other crap. Instagram, Facebook, also MasterDonePod, and on YouTube as well. So get over there and subscribe because we need to get some more subscribers. We're getting more views than we have subscribers. So
you're not gonna be able to retire early unless you start subscribing.
I need that YouTube money. You know, give me that YouTube money. It hasn't happened yet, but all right, boys. Appreciate it as always. I will see you next week.
Bye.